Enemy of the state.
An enemy of the state.
Enemy of the state.
Dank Podstash.
You're listening to Enemy of the State's Dank Podstash. Visit thedankpodstash.com where you'll find our shop, calendar of events, and more. Become a patron or BitBacker and join us in our private Discord server where you'll have access to live shows and post-show Q&As.
Business owners, you can advertise on the Dank Podstash, reach a larger audience, and make more sales. Just email us at dankpodstash@gmail.com for more details.
All right. Well, welcome, fellow enemies of the state, to Enemy of the State's Dank Podstash number 32. Today, we have a sponsor. Our sponsor is Earthbound Martian. Earthbound Martian has a variety of gifts, toys, other novelty items. I know they do some custom work. Some of it anarchist-themed, some of it just for fun. So definitely go check out earthboundmartian.com, Earthbound Martian on Facebook and everywhere else you can find them on social media. Good people, awesome products. And also, as usual, we are working with Shane Radliff from the Vonu podcast. Shane also runs libertyunderattack.com. With code DANK10, you can take 10% off your order from libertyunderattack.com. Just type in that coupon code and you'll have 10% off books, which focus on self-liberation, freedom strategies, solutions, and more. His current books being #Agora, the Second Realm book on strategy, Ben Stone's Sedition, Subversion, and Sabotage, Field Manual #1, and Shane's very own Vonu, A Strategy for Self-Liberation. We got all those books right here, and you can have those too if you check them out on libertyunderattack.com. And Shane also offers assistance to new authors throughout the publishing process, including editing, proofreading, formatting for Kindle and paperback, and full-service audiobook production. So check out Liberty Under Attack Publications. Share your story, find your freedom. How's it going, David?
It's going all right. Still fighting with stupid live streaming stuff. So who knows if it's going to work today or not, but
let's hope so.
I'm trying my best. I'm tired of technology and all that entails. I just want to go become an Ancrim and live in the woods and not have to deal with any of it. It's way better. But today we are here with the wonderful Bexley. So hello, how are you?
Hi, I'm good. How are you?
All right.
Stream's kicking your ass, huh?
I got the giggles.
Speaking of which, I'm about to send you another email.
What do you... Yes, send all the emails that I can do nothing with currently. What do you want to talk about today, Bexley?
We're talking about abortion. I'm sorry, I'm not trying to laugh. Oh my gosh, that's not something you laugh about. But yeah, we're talking about abortion, and I wanted to kind of go over like some parts that I feel are missed often when abortion is talked about, because you got the pro-life side, you got the pro-choice side, and they're just constantly clashing together, and I feel like it misses a lot of important facts when it comes to this topic. That I think the ultimate goal should be to reduce abortion rates, but I think we can do this without getting government involved. That will take away more rights, because making abortion illegal isn't just gonna take away abortion, but it's also going to take more women's rights away, especially when it comes to miscarrying. So we can see in countries where abortion is already illegal, there are women who have miscarriages. They get reported as having possible induced miscarriages. So that's, a lot of fun. And then another thing to take into consideration is the fact that in the U.S., the third leading cause of death is medical malpractice, and as well as the fact that doctors are mandatory reporters. We have an increase risk of children being taken away if you look for a second opinion, and all this stuff. So I think it all clashes down together, and I think we need to look at the bigger picture here. And we should also be looking at countries with the lowest abortion rates to see what they are doing. I think the Netherlands and Switzerland, they're countries with some of the lowest abortion rates, and it's completely legal, but they also focus on sex education as well. But they don't criminalize it and take women's rights away in general. So,
well, I'm glad you
Well, I
predicated
certainly
that
don't.
with. Sorry, I'm glad you predicated that with the goal of reducing the rates of abortion, because I think that's a point that a lot of people really just gloss over or choose to ignore when they're getting into discussions about this from mostly the pro-life side. They just assume that everybody who
absolutely.
wants abortion to be a thing is wanting to kill all the babies possible, and I definitely don't think that's the case.
Right. Even people who support abortion, they're not exactly, they love abortion, but they're more on the side of pro-choice. They're not going to force someone to continue a pregnancy that they don't want, that kind of thing. I can definitely see points on both sides, so I try my best to not take either side, especially because this topic, it takes a toll emotionally and mentally on a lot of people. So yeah.
Well, a lot of people have very strong opinions about this, and they don't want to look at all that data that you were talking about. They don't want to go through that information. They just want to stand on their hill and die on it and scream at anybody who disagrees with them. But it is extremely important to look at the information at hand. This is a subject that I stay away from because, like you said, there's a lot of emotion involved in it. The only thing I really have to say about it to people when I do get into it is that, like, no, you shouldn't be trying to use the government or any entity like that to force your will and opinion on another human being. And
exactly.
Then the counter is, well, you're forcing your opinion on this unborn child or what have you, whatever the vernacular they use is. And I just feel like that's a non-argument.
Right. And it's surprising to me in the anarchist and libertarian community where they fully support government getting involved in this, because a lot of them are pro-life. They which I don't think is necessarily a bad thing, but I think they completely overlook the fact that it's not just about eliminating abortion. Not only does making it illegal not drop the abortion rates, because the abortion rates are still going to stay the same. It's just going to make abortion less safe, and it's going to, in the meantime, also take further rights away. Like a woman who's going through a miscarriage, do you think they really need to deal with being prosecuted as inducing their own miscarriage, making it their fault? Like, that's so screwed up, So I don't think they are looking at the bigger picture here when they're arguing for government to get involved. And I, at least with the anarchists, I tried to remind them that we shouldn't support the government getting involved in this shit.
Yeah,
it's very picky. Like, people are like, oh, well, I don't like the state and I don't want them involved unless it's something that I like, and then right. I'm all for it. And it's come on. Well, what were you gonna say?
Well, people want other people to enact the violence and whatever subjugation, imprisonment on the behalf of their views, whether it's through the state or not. There's people out there in the groups of anarchists, libertarians, and whatnot who want to see people who have abortions or doctors who perform abortions hunted down or killed even. And I don't see the difference just because it's the state doing it versus a private entity doing it, hired one way or another. You're still forcing someone to do something that you want them to do with their body. And there is the argument for another body being present. But and there's so many gray areas. Where I kind of come at it from is I don't have to worry about this because I don't have the ability to have a baby. I'm not going to have to worry about it for me personally. With my wife and I, it's a personal conversation issue between us if that's something that ever arises. And when it comes down to it, I would never force her to do one or the other, because that's literally enslaving someone as an incubator. And that's the only time that conversation I think is reasonable, when it's between two people who are making that child, or whatever combination of people are making that child with, what's it called? I don't know, some sort of artificial insemination, or, a host mother or something like that. There's varying shades of black and white and gray in the conversation, but what it comes down to is personal choices and respecting other people's bodily autonomy.
Exactly, yeah. I know that I think we mentioned this earlier with Georgia. There's a 11-year-old girl who was raped and is now pregnant, and now she can't even terminate the pregnancy. And oh my gosh, I just think that's so messed up. Like, it's a fucking child.
Mm-hmm.
You're really going to make her go through that process. I mean, given if, she made the choice of not to terminate, I fully respect that. But to expect an 11-year-old girl to carry on a pregnancy, especially one that she got pregnant from being raped, like, ugh, that's so gross.
That's a
And not only
reminder.
that,
Go ahead, dude.
her we're gonna do it 1,000 times. I thought it'd be better without video, but we still do it, or with video. Anyways, not only is she going through this traumatic event, it's just everywhere. Her business is absolutely, I mean, we're sitting here talking about it right now, and we don't know this person. So she's in the public eye for this horrible thing that happened to her. And that I don't even have words to say for that, because that's, the situation itself is terrible, but now it's out for everybody to talk about, for everybody to judge her, for everybody, I'm sure it's 100-fold worse than it would have been.
Well,
right, it just makes it worse on the victim. And
it's potentially physically damaging as well, isn't it?
I'm sorry?
It's potentially physically damaging for her as well to carry the baby to term.
Yeah. I haven't done a whole lot of reading on children being and what a toll it takes on their bodies to give birth, but I can definitely say, like, 11 it's too young. Like, I look at my little sisters, even them being 13 years old, it's, their bodies are so small. They haven't gone through. I am so sorry, guys.
That's okay.
It's okay.
Don't worry about it. I got doggos here too. They're just sleeping.
I have. I'm so sorry. Well, what was I saying now? I'm so sorry. Yeah, their bodies are just so small, and they haven't gone through puberty all the way. They're not mature, and to expect a child to go through a pregnancy that is meant for mature, physically mature women to go through, and that it can be damaging. She's gonna have to probably have a C-section at that, and especially in a country where birth rights are often violated, and women's birth choices in their body is not respected with birthing. It just makes it so much worse. Kind of reminds me of the story of, I forget the name, but there was a 5-year-old girl that was raped, and she was forced to have that baby, and she had to have a C-section, and then her baby was raised as her sibling after. I forget the name, but I know that happened some time ago.
Yeah.
That's bad for the child too. That could be extremely traumatizing for that child, especially raised as the sister. Like, or,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? Like that could create a lot of problems in the future. You know, I just, God, people suck. That's all I have to say about that.
I agree with you. They absolutely do suck. It's like things like this. It just makes me lose hope for humanity. And I know that's a negative way to think, and I don't like thinking that way, but it's so hard to think otherwise, you know, when shit like this happens.
Do we have details on the law that has caused this? Like, I'm so out of the loop. I've been banned on everything for a while now, so I haven't been paying attention.
I know a couple details, just that it's a heartbeat bill, and so you can hear a heartbeat by like 6 weeks, and they recently passed a bill, but I don't know if it's taken effect immediately, because I was just before we got on, I went ahead and browsed a little bit, and I was reading that it doesn't take effect immediately, but for whatever reason, this girl's being plastered all over media and used as an example everywhere. Unfortunately, I've been kind of staying out of it because it's a shit show.
Yeah.
And most of the articles I'm reading are opinion articles. They're not really factual based, so I try to stay away from the emotional filled opinion articles, you know.
It's a lot to take. Like, it's a lot. It's strong emotions, and it's a hard subject. It's certainly not on you. I should have been more prepared and looked into these things before the episode, but you know.
Well, to be fair, I just skimmed over them. I'm sorry.
No.
I did take a couple notes, but
Yeah, no worries.
but like I said, I kind of wanted.
Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was just saying, I just kind of wanted to like really dive into, you know, sex education and, you know, looking at solutions that actually help solve the problem rather than, you know, the typical abortion arguments where abortion is wrong or abortion is a choice, you know. So,
Mm-hmm.
sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt
No,
you.
jump on in. Let's hear him.
Well, I know that with the Netherlands and Switzerland, they have the lowest abortion rates, with abortion being legal. I know that one of the main factors of it is because they have really good sex education, and they start it as soon as the child can comprehend. You know, it's not like, it is age appropriate, so it's not like gruesome for, you know, a 3-year-old to know all the sloppy details of sex, but you know, but and I think another benefit, like as a side note, with teaching sex education actually helps prevent and lower risks of molestation and rape in children, or sexual assault, I should say. But so with that being said, I do know that when children are more educated about sex, as they get older and, you know, they become young adults, where the hormones start taking in and, you know, sex is always on the brain, they can better handle, they understand better what's going on, and they can make more reasonable decisions. Especially since they're more aware about birth control, you know, the various options. Most of these countries, they also teach fertility awareness methods, and they add that with birth control. So you got kind of two forms of birth control going on there. So these children, you know, they're more mature and they're mentally prepared. And then they also teach them to be smart about who you have sex with as well. So if you're going to choose to be intimate with someone, you're making the right choice of making sure that you're sleeping with someone who isn't complete psycho. I'm not sure what my wording with that was going, but pregnancy brain, sorry. But I think one of the main factors to lowering abortion is proper sex education and not just abstinence only teaching. I think that's a problem with many states in the US with the highest abortion rates. Also happen to be areas that are the most religious, and they teach abstinence only. They don't really get into the details of sex and fertilization and how the body works, and they heavily shame birth control as well. So
it's interesting. As these conversations come up on social media, I've come across so many people, so many women who have gotten pregnant despite, multi levels of birth control. And so where does outlawing abortion leave people that happens to? What's going to happen in that case? Maybe the child's born into an environment where it can't be cared for. If they're not aware that they're pregnant, maybe they're not taking the correct steps to have a healthy baby. There's all kinds of questions there.
right, and then sorry, spaced out again. Not only that, but they continue to take birth control, and you don't know what kind of birth defects that's going to cause on the baby. You don't know the person's situation and why they are avoiding pregnancy in the first place. I mean, I don't think anyone owes anyone an explanation in the first place why they don't want to get pregnant. Because frankly, it's none of our fucking businesses. But with that being said, they're taking birth control. They don't want a child, and then they get pregnant, and what do they do now? Personally, I kind of say that's none of my business. It's not something that I would personally consider. My pregnancy is unplanned, but for me, I've chosen that. I chose to have sex. I chosen to be with this person, and I'm going to accept my personal responsibility to continue with this pregnancy. But I am also in a very secure spot to do this in, and financially it's secure. And so, and I think along with this this part of the topic, we need to look at foster care systems and the adoption care systems. Look at where those children are. There's hundreds of children who need loving homes. There's thousands of children who are being abused. They're in foster care systems where they are not being taken care of very well. Many children die in foster care. There's sexual abuse going on. There's all this shit. And people have the audacity to say, if you choose abortion, you don't care about children. Meanwhile, they're all talk. They're not giving a damn about these kids who don't have homes and families, and they're being abused all the time.
Yeah.
I think it's pretty hypocritical. And I think before we even consider, if we were to consider, limiting abortion on people, before we even do that, we should be tackling adoption and foster care systems. We should be changing the way CPS runs. We should be changing that, because we should not be putting more children in those positions. It's absolutely disgusting.
Horrible, awful things happen to children in the foster care system and through CPS, and it's been shown that they're literally sex trafficking children, using their position, as the engine for that. And it's a really big disconnect in the minds of a lot of people, I think, is saying, well, you can't kill this fetus, but once it's born, whatever happens. This is the system we have. Oh well. It's really fucked up. I know it's hard to I know it's hard to come at this conversation as anarchists, because the go-to answer, the thing that we believe is, don't fuck with other people, let people do what they're going to do. So it's kind of hard to analyze the philosophical, the moral rights, all that stuff, if that's not too spooky for you, talking about morals and rights when it comes to abortion and whatnot. It's hard to get into that, but it's a conversation that's in the community, and I really don't see a good answer other than, if you are a person that is against abortion in every way, shape, or form, 100%, I think the only answer is to disassociate. There's you don't have to associate with people who choose to do that. You can live in a community and do business with people who are also pro-life. But to go beyond that, to enforce your moral, your morals on other people, it just stinks of statism to me. It stinks of authoritarianism, of forcing other people to do something. And I think it can be a slippery slope as well, because they say if you're willing to let fetuses, babies, whatever, at whatever stage they are, be killed, then what else are you willing to let happen? And I think that's kind of a cop-out. I don't think that just because you're willing to let, for whatever reason, like we mentioned, there's so many fucking reasons that it could be a necessary thing. If you're willing to let that happen, that doesn't mean that you're willing to let horrible atrocities happen within your community either. It's just a lot of grasping at straws.
Yeah. Like you said, there's a lot of viewpoints that can go into this. I'm always questioning my stances with the issue because there's just so much information. There's rights and wrongs on both sides of the argument. And it really is difficult to, especially when you're arguing from a moral perspective, like what's moral, what isn't with this. I think it's a healthy discussion. I think it's healthy for people to have this discussion as long as they can maintain maturity and rationalization, I was going to say something else and I totally forgot. I'm sorry.
I do that every episode.
What was it? It's been so bad lately. Oh, goodness. No, I forgot again. No, I remember.
There it is.
Yes. I'm so sorry. Well, I think what I was going to say was something in hand with people who are focused with, children being born but not giving a damn after they're born. I think for people who are genuinely pro-life, if you're pro-life, you're going to do something that works, So you need to take down your emotional walls. You need to take all that shit down and look at it from a rational point of view, even if it's something that you don't want to do. So with making abortion illegal, we know that making it illegal isn't going to do anything. So from a pro-life stance, what the fuck do you do? And well, that's when you look into what works. And that means, keeping an abortion keeping it legal. And then also, taking into consideration that maybe you should be looking into changing how CPS runs, how the foster care systems and CPS and adoption goes. We should be focusing on changing how children are treated in the systems when a parent cannot care for a child. I think to me that speaks more pro-life than saying abortion is wrong,
Yeah.
And I know a lot of people who are on the pro-choice side, but they are more pro-life than most of these people I see spout horrific shit at people who have chosen to get abortions, because they go out of their way to try to make life easier for other children. They go out of their way to volunteer, give love to these kids, and so I think what it boils down to is, are you going to make the steps necessary to actually make progress, or are you just going to sit there and bitch and complain?
So I have a question, and I'm woefully undereducated on this subject, but obviously there's private adoption places, right? Is CPS in the state with the foster care system, is that the only go-to option if people don't have money to go to a private center? Does it cost money to give a child to an adoption center that's private, or?
From my understanding, because if I'm being honest, I haven't really read into it too much. I know that with my mom, she had me when she was 16. So she was considering putting me up for adoption. But they were going privately, and the family that she was going to give me to were going to be the ones that paid for the medical expenses, as well as, you know, paying to have me. So I do know that is an option. Going private is absolutely better than parents can absolutely choose the families that their baby can go to. So I definitely, when that topic comes, I like to point out to people, well, if you're going to consider adoption, consider going private and choosing a family. Like, even if you know someone in your family who's trying, like, maybe you can offer them to adopt. You know, there's options out there. So it's not always going to be the main, what's the word? I can't think of the word right now, but let's just call it CPS and foster care, you know. Sorry.
No worries. I suppose I need to look into this some more. I see some.
This question makes me want to look more up into it too.
For me personally, I've never, even considered any kind of adoption or anything like that. I have 2 children, and never in my mind could there ever be a child that is my child that I am not there for and taking care of, because that it would kill me. It would just break my heart.
Absolutely.
Excuse me. But my wondering is, like, if how these children get into CPS and the foster care, like, is it that the family has no, recourse monetarily? There's no financial situation that can get them better, and they just end up in the state system? Or I also think taken a lot. The CPS just takes children from people that they deem unworthy. So.
Right. And I also think lack of education also participates in that as well. Like, if you're just planning on getting your baby up for adoption and you're not putting in the effort to look for the families or whatever, and you just go through the government system to do that, I think that plays a part in that as well. And not only that, but CPS, they don't really give a shit. They'll just take your kid, whether or not they're in a good family. So
yeah.
I would be curious to see if a lot of the people that you see freaking out about being anti-abortion, especially within anarchists and libertarians, I'd be curious to see if anybody is working on an alternative system for CPS or anything like that, for foster care, that kind of stuff. Because that's something, when we were doing research for the Anarchist Networking show that I ended up doing with Hody, that was one thing I was talking about with my wife, is how absolutely fucked up the foster care system is, and what horrible things it puts a lot of children through at the hands of a government system, because a lot of times it's just people looking for money. Each kid that they foster is a paycheck, and so those kids get as little as possible so they can keep that money. Not to mention just the absolutely disgusting, sick people who are attracted to that for their own fucked up reasons. I think that anarchists and libertarians could do an amazing job with something like that, because for the most part we focus on growing the individual and creating better communication between all people, and what better foundations for raising children, besides teaching them to be their own strong individual and to react or to interact excellently between with other people. I'd be really curious to see that, and if that hasn't started, then if there are any pro-life, super anti-abortion anarchists or libertarians listening, I'd definitely, first of all, put your money where your mouth is. Second of all, I'll be right there with you. That's something I'm definitely interested in, because I was 100% unexpected when I was conceived, and could very easily have been an abortion. My mom was in nursing school, and it just took that away from her, and she decided to keep me and to put everything into me. She invested in me, and I couldn't appreciate it more. And she had a safety net, she had family that would help her out. And a lot of people don't have that. So creating a safety net for people in our community, I think, is very important. So I'd love to see that happen. I don't know how to start it. I don't know how possible it is to start that within the current system. You know, I wonder if they have a monopoly on that as well. That's definitely something to look into. But if we can get that going, hell, let's fucking do it. And, you know, quit fighting with each other and create a better environment for this kind of stuff. There's other options.
Yeah, I think that would be really cool. I'd be really into that. And like I said earlier, I think that whichever side that you're on, the ultimate goal should be what can we do to reduce abortion rates, and also reducing child poverty in rates.
Mm-hmm.
I can't English. I'm sorry. Can't English today.
I don't know how to word. See, I just messed it up. I don't know how to word either. What are words?
I barely have a grasp on the language. You know, have you guys seen that? I think it's Iceland has claimed that they've eliminated Down syndrome in their country, and it's through abortion. When they discover that the fetus is, I believe, either high risk or definitely going to have Down syndrome, it's, from what I understand, mandated state abortion. That's a scary fucking world to live in.
Oh yeah, no.
Yeah.
Some of the most friendly people I've known that had Down syndrome, and I absolutely love them. And they don't want to change themselves. They're pretty happy. You know, that's pretty sad to think about that it's mandated.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's sad. I hate to think about that. Sorry, smacking my.
Well, there's two extremes. There's abortions for any reason, no matter what, and then there, total freedom to choose to do that no matter what, and then there's forced, either abortion or non-abortion, and
Right.
It's that middle ground that's hard to find.
Yeah. If a child is going to be born with a medical condition or a defect, that is absolutely the parent's choice, not anyone's fucking choice to make. If a parent is having a high-risk pregnancy where they can die, it's still their decision if they want to continue that pregnancy or not. It shouldn't be mandated whatsoever.
It should never be up to the state with anything.
Yeah.
Ever.
State can go fuck itself.
Exactly.
They are evil, and people's best interest is not their concern, and it never has been. So I just think it's really interesting that people are seriously supporting the state getting involved with this. I don't know if I mentioned earlier about the ectopic or tubal pregnancies in Ohio, where they're trying to pass a bill to make it illegal to not have an abortion with that, because it has to be surgically removed one way or another. But they think that a fetus can be, can be reimplanted back into the uterus, which does not work. So they're trying to make a bill that makes it illegal to even have an abortion that saves a life. With tubal pregnancies like this, where the fetus is placed in the wrong part of the uterus, the end result is never going to be a baby, but the end result can possibly be the mother's life. So, and it's like examples like this that you look at, and I cannot fathom how people look at this and can possibly think that this is okay and that the state should have anything to do with these decisions. It's mind-boggling. It's choice words. Stupid.
This is very much my opinion, but when I've been, on my super secret sock account, scrolling through Facebook a little bit lately, the people that have been arguing like in a pro-life stance that I've seen seem to be the types that have something like they basically strongly dislike women. They have lots of other opinions that also I look at them unsure, because I'm like, are you just really hating on women? Like, do you think that all the problems in the world are women's fault? Because all of your opinions seem to line up with that. So I'm wondering how much that has to do. Obviously, that's a very, opinionated statement, but I think
I see it all the time too.
Yeah.
It's I especially see a lot of anarchist women posting screenshots all over online. So I've definitely been seeing a lot of very sexist comments and point of views with this. And honestly, I see like these laws and bills no different than these men's attitudes towards women's rights, and women are always to blame kind of attitude.
It's weird.
And that's exactly what these bills are going to do. It's just going to take women's rights away. It's not just the abortion. It's much deeper than that. So in a way, I can see why that connects together with people who think that way.
Well, that's something that leads me to the thought that I could never really have a valid opinion on this, because it's not something that would happen to me, is what you guys are mentioning about seeing a lot more males being, I don't know what the word is, I'm not Englishing either, but a lot more males being hostile in these cases. Because when I brought up before, I just stumbled across a conversation today of two women talking about how multiple of their pregnancies had happened through multiple layers of birth control. And before they let that be known, the two guys that were talking to them were saying, well, you should use birth control if you don't want to get pregnant. And it's like, man, there's a whole lot of shit I don't know about female reproduction and the whole system and how all that works. So why the hell would I have any reason to try to tell women what to do with their reproductive systems? At the very least, if you want to have that conversation, educate yourself. But even better, mind your own fucking business.
Yeah, there's a lot of information out there, especially when it comes to women's reproductive systems. But I also seen a post recently where this lady, she was saying that men should be the ones responsible for their reproduction and preventing pregnancies, which, I think it would be cool if men could have that option as well. But I don't think that the blame should be mainly on men. Granted, it seems unfair that it's women that need to take the main responsibility of preventing a pregnancy, but ultimately we are the ones that get pregnant. We're the ones that go through this process. So ultimately we need to have that responsibility. It seems like it's unfair, but there's a lot of things that one gender faces that the other doesn't. It happens on both sides. So I think with that, with some of those arguments I've seen that are trying to be counteractive, is that the word I'm looking for? To these arguments were counterproductive. Thank you. Counteractive. Wow.
I got one word today.
Yeah, so I think it's really funny how like these women, they're trying to face these men who are being just as sexist, and they're trying to say, well, you need to be the ones that are responsible for not getting us pregnant. And to me it's kind of irrational, and it kind of falls back into how emotional this topic is for everybody, and it makes everyone irrational. Even like people who have like the best intent with their side, they get irrational. So
I think it's pretty plain to see that it's a two-way street. It takes two people to make this happen. So everybody needs to take responsibility for their sexual interactions, obviously. But I've always wondered. I'm not in that situation anymore. I'm not single, and I was never big on it anyways. But if during one night stand, something like that, I were to get a woman pregnant and ask that they not have an abortion, and I'd pay for everything and take the kid and raise it as my own if they didn't want to be involved. It's a lot to ask, because that's, 9 months of them sacrificing a lot. But I know there's guys out there who would be willing to take on all that responsibility after the fact and pay for everything there during the process. I think that could definitely be a valid option as well, if both parties consent.
Yeah. Yeah, if both parties consent. I know that there's sometimes sticky situations where the woman is just not going to give in to it. She doesn't want to go through the pregnancy symptoms, because, yeah, it does take a toll on your body. Even like with this first trimester, holy shit, that shit kicks your ass, And then I think it would be really cool if a situation where like that were to happen, where people can communicate and come to an agreement where the father can decide to keep the child and the woman doesn't have to deal with it. But unfortunately, that's not always going to be the case. And ultimately, it's really is going to be her decision, because it is her body. But that kind of falls back onto like teaching people to be smart with how they have sex and who they have sex with. Being able to read people better, being able to get to know people better, rather than, just sleeping around because, oh, this person gets my boner going, let's go, and I think Americans are really bad about that. They're not very smart with how they have sex and who they have sex with. So I think
in that situation, the guy needs to take responsibility for the fact that he knew that this was a possibility. He knew that she could get pregnant. He knew that she could not want to keep it and get an abortion. He knew all of that prior to sticking his dick in her. And then suddenly after the fact, it's like, oh no, like, you're terrible and horrible. No, man, you made the choice too. And you knew that these were possibilities, and you need to take, the responsibility for that. So, sorry to cut you off.
Yeah. Oh no, you're fine. Exactly. And even with birth control, there's not 100% effective birth control unless you get sterilized, and most people, they don't want to get sterilized because they may choose to have children in the future. They may be ready later. But yeah, birth control is not 100% effective. I was doing a method where it was about 99% effective if done right. It's just as effective as a pill. I'm pregnant now, and I'm very excited about it. Don't get me wrong. But it's always a possibility. And I think that's another thing that people need to be informed about. Like, just because you're on birth control doesn't mean that you're completely safe from getting pregnant. And I think a lot of people, they take it too lightly. They don't take it seriously. Especially if they have the mindset like, oh, this isn't going to happen to me. So I think a lot of people, they have that mindset, and then until they realize it happened, and like, oh shit, that it's not taken as seriously as I think it should be.
You mentioned earlier that specifically Americans are pretty bad about choosing who to have sex with. I'd broaden that to a lot of Western cultures, specifically coming from Abrahamic religions. Because on the deep rabbit hole that I've been going down with evolutionary biology and figuring out who humans were before our modern version, and forward from there to now, and looking at hunter-gatherer societies and small tribal communities, things like that, there's a very interesting thing. There's really not a whole lot of jealousy because of monogamy, because monogamy is not as pushed of a thing. And, to each their own. If you want to be with one person and they want to be with you, that's great. It's just an interesting dynamic that in a lot of the tribes, specifically hunter-gatherer tribes in the Amazon, that they're looking at, both that exist now and have existed in the past, sex is not a two-person thing necessarily. There's multiple partners, multiple people, and that also brings in multiple parents, and it cuts out a lot of jealousy. And a lot of the reasons that we see abortions happen now, or I don't even know if it's always abortions happening now, but in what we see as the conservative times in the 50s and stuff, if an unmarried girl would get pregnant, she'd go to live with her aunt or whatever. I don't know. I see these anecdotes, and have the baby and then put the baby up for adoption and then go home. And it's this horrible, shameful thing. And that doesn't happen in a lot of societies that live, I guess I want to say more primitively, but just in line with a lot of the natural instincts that humans have. Just thought that was an interesting dynamic.
Right. Yeah, humans definitely thrived on the polyamory type of lifestyle. Polygamy, polyamory, I think both. Where either sister wives or the entire tribe, they all came together to take care of the children. It wasn't just the mother's job. They take turns taking care of the children, going out hunting, taking care of the chores and all that stuff. So I think that it's pretty interesting to think about, going back to our ancestry and the way humans used to live.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, along with that, there's been, many different methods of abortion going back thousands of years, whether it's herbal or what. It's not a new thing. It's something that's happened, and I think it's been more accepted in the past than it is now.
Yeah. I think so too. I did read a little bit on the different methods of abortion that humans used to use, though I can't say that I've done a whole lot of research on all of that. So on the acceptance, I don't know necessarily. But all I do know is that where it's more accepted, where there's more knowledge and understanding with it, the less likely it is to happen. Because, you don't have, when you're in a less judgmental environment, where you're in an environment where you are supported and all that shit, the less likely that someone is to have an abortion to begin with. They're not afraid. I know a lot of girls who did have an abortion because they were afraid of their family. They were afraid of rejection. Even with just dating, like women who have children already, and how dating is, and what some people say online about single parents. And I don't know, there's a lot of factors into it. So I do think that when there's a more acceptance, there's less likely to feel the need to terminate a pregnancy.
Yeah, absolutely. Imagine if the people, picketing and holding rallies outside of abortion clinics, that would be, I can only imagine, pretty fucking scary if I was a young girl trying to go see what my options were, and there's just crowds of people screaming at you for being a murderer or something. Why not approach that with kindness? Why not, if you feel like you need to be out there trying to convince people to not have abortions, why not approach and say, how can I help you to not do this? Is there a way that I can help you? I know it's your choice, but what can we do to make this an easier experience for you, and take some of the fear out of it, take some of the questions and the insecurity? That seems like, why wouldn't that be the approach?
Right. Just people are hateful or overly emotional. I also think another thing you brought up, people protesting outside of clinics, Planned Parenthood. There's a lot of people that they'll protest and they will harass women going in and out. But at the same time, they don't know if the woman is going in for an abortion. They offer a whole bunch of other services. And I also know from friends who explained to me how their process was, generally a lot of them try to convince them, you don't need to have an abortion, so that's not always the case. I actually recently went in because I needed to get a breast examination because I had a scare. I found a lump. So I needed to go somewhere where I was going to be taken seriously. I think in general, these doctors in our country, they do not take women's worries very seriously. they pass it off, especially when you're in your younger 20s and you're scared that you have breast cancer. They just play it off. And, with clinics like Planned Parenthood, they take that more seriously. So I went in and I found that I was okay. And, I was able to have that relief. But then after I went, I read a story where this woman, she had the same experience. She went in to get a breast examination. She came out, she was harassed by these anti-abortion people who were screaming at her. They kept posting flyers all over her car. She had to get out. And she goes, just so you know, my breast examination to see if I have cancer went well.
Wow.
So, yeah, so it's really mind-boggling just how hateful people are. And like you said, if we went with the approach of being more accepting and helpful and offering help, offering understanding and support, not only do you avoid miscommunication and slandering women who aren't even considering having an abortion, not only do you avoid that, but you may actually be able to help someone who was considering it, and maybe they'll decide not to have an abortion if they actually have the help and support to take care of the baby or have other options.
Hell yeah.
Yeah. That's
it's a hard thing to think about.
It is.
But there's a positive
care in this country sucks.
And we can only try to make it better, like we do with everything, as anarchists and libertarians out here. I really don't think that people are trying to make it worse. I think we're trying to make it better. And there's a lot of negativity on, social media, Facebook. That's why I've been away for quite a while. But I think that was at the end there. It was very positive, and I think that's what we need to focus on. I wasn't sure where this show would go, where the conversation would go, because it feels awkward talking about it. But I think we came to a very we came to a very kind conclusion, and that it's the conclusion we always come to, right? Respect other people, be kind to each other, try to help each other. And we just hit an hour too, so I think that's a good place to end it. Is be excellent to each other, help each other find the answers. We can do that together. I'm feeling very positive with conversations like this, and with the Discord that we have going. The Discord's awesome. It's definitely not as toxic as places like Facebook. I wouldn't even say it's toxic at all. There's great conversations and stuff going on. So come talk with us more. If you're interested in joining us in the Discord, send me or David a message, or hit us up on the Dank Podstash Facebook or the website, and we'll get you in there, and we can continue talking about important things like this and seeing what we can do to make a difference. So thank you very much for joining us. We really appreciate having you on. It was a great conversation. I'm glad we were able to have it.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
It was a good time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I enjoyed it. We should do it again.
Hell yeah, we will do it again for sure. I know we have our patrons watching on the private YouTube stream, so if you're interested in being here for the live recording of the show, check out patreon.com/thedankpodstash. We also have a BitBacker. It's all up there on the screen. It'll be in the video. It'll be in the links. Come hang out with us. And now we're going to end this show and go to a quick Q&A with our patrons and Bexley. We'll see y'all next time.